Tekken 8 Season 2 patch is here, and it's an absolute disaster. A supposedly defense-focused patch that puts more 50-50s in the game has reshaped the Steam review chart into a cliff worthy of Heihachi Mishima himself. This patch is weirdly ambitious, adding a ton of new moves. Fans are confused and pros are pissed, with one asking whether this was the worst patch ever. Let's dive in.
This is unplayable competitively.
For about a year now, pros have been complaining about Tekken 8's gameplay. Too much aggression, too many 50-50s. At the core of these complaints is Tekken 8's new heat system, which gives attackers so much pressure that pro players often just take the added chip damage when defending rather than risk getting launched. Damage is part of the problem for sure, but so is wall carry. Arslan Ash summed up the issue well right before the last time we talked about Tekken 8's balance.
They can win with one launch. And then 50-50, and then instead, bro, this is Tekken 8. It's just too bad. What is this game, man?
The Season 2 patch was supposed to change that by putting a focus on defense and reducing chip damage, but now that it's here, almost everyone is confused about what the hell this patch is trying to accomplish. The sad part is there really was hope for this thing, especially since this is the foundation of the game's balance direction for Season 2 and this year's Tekken World Tour. When some of the changes were previewed on a Tekken Talk stream though, there was the first hitch. For some reason, they added chip damage if you correctly break a throw.
Did he take chip damage breaking up?
They'd said they'd reduce chip damage, but here they were adding it to normal throws. It was weird. There were some other strange things too, but this throw change was really a head scratcher. It ultimately went live with Season 2, but the notes say it will be reverted in a future patch. Now that we have the patch notes though, it's clear that it wasn't what the community expected. We'll get into specific changes in just a moment, but right off, we should note that reactions have been extremely negative. On Steam, the reviews are once again getting bombed. At this point, the store page is probably considered a polling place. Pro players have also voiced their displeasure with the changes. Joker hit God of Destruction first in Season 2, and then posted a tweet where he sort of just despaired about the patch. One of the top players in the world just utterly confused by the patch and the decision making. Now, while you can probably find individual changes that individual pros approve of in the patch notes, generally speaking, the outlook is extremely negative. So what actually changed? Well, for one thing, every character can choose to end a heat dash in a crouching state, giving them more 50-50 potential. That doesn't buff defense though, obviously. The most obvious buff to defense is probably that sidestepping was buffed and some tracking moves were nerfed. They also completely changed the way Okizeme works, but by heavily simplifying it for the defender. A lot of knockdowns let you get a quick backslide for free.
The way it's worked so far is that when you get up with your back towards the opponent, yeah, you can get relaunched because during half the animation you're in grounded state. But then during the latter half, before you can block, there's a ton of frames where you can get fully launched because you're in standing state. But now we've changed it so that you're in grounded position until the very last frame when you've recovered and you can block. That's a huge nerf to Oki.
But I mentioned earlier this patch was ambitious, and that's because they actually added a ton of new moves to nearly every character.
And you've now added tons of new moves. Tons of new strings, and every character now seems like they're stance characters. Like, why does Jack have an install?
In some cases, like Elisa for example, these new moves seem to be designed to get players to diversify into other stances. In other cases, it's less clear what the purpose was besides just giving them access to more options, but in some cases, these made Heat even better.
A lot of their characters in this game now have things that they shouldn't even really have. It's just insane.
That means that gauging the balance impact isn't easy. As King J just said, and Joker's tweet mentioned, some of these new moves seem pretty crazy. One thing that seems certain though is that you probably don't reduce the number of issues in a game that already had a bunch by adding a ton of new moves. Content creator IMOP helpfully demonstrated this insane new Jack string, for example, and bear in mind, this was added to the game by Season 2. This isn't even attempting to fix an old problem. This is creating a new unforced one. I can't go through all of the character changes right now, so if you want to know how your main fared, the best thing to do right now is to just test it yourself or find someone who plays them. But if you played a former top tier and you're worried about huge changes, then good news, I guess. A lot of the top tier characters received a mix of nerfs and buffs, and with these added moves, it's very possible that you're still in S tier. The conventional wisdom before the patch was that most characters in the game were playable, but the top tiers were just more playable. Now with all these changes, it's going to be truly chaotic to try and figure it all out before Tekken World Tour. The cherry on top is that they removed some things that just weren't really an issue, like they changed key charge to no longer give you counter hit. They made any combo starter that hit an opponent's front realign them to you if they were off axis. These changes might make the game simpler, but only by just ripping something out that long-time players are used to, and for nothing in return. To summarize, what was supposed to be a defense-focused patch has instead given a couple meager defensive improvements while completely juicing the entire roster. Many of these buffs involve the very system, Heat, that players hoped devs would try to limit. Heat was adjusted in some ways that made it weaker, sure, but it's got lots of new toys. The patch also made Oki very different, and not in a good way. It handed out so many new options that players feel like character identity has been compromised. There are lots of other things that should have been addressed but were left intact too. So why did this happen, and where do we go from here? Well, one thing that's been on everyone's mind recently is that Tekken 7's success didn't happen in Season 1. Not really. Yes, the game had something called Season 1, but before that, it basically had 2 years of arcade testing. But for Tekken 8, we're still in those first 2 years, and patches like this show that the developers are still trying to figure out how the game should grow from here. Unfortunately, this patch seems to have gone in a much different direction than fans and pros wanted. It will be hard to see the immediate impact of the meager defensive buffs while trying to learn and getting blown up by all these new moves in the game. For people who want to take the game seriously, this patch represents yet another setback. Some players, like King J, have said that it's basically killed their drive to compete in it, even if they are still having some fun messing around with it.
We're in a bad time right now. I'm not even gonna lie to you. We're in a very bad time when it comes to this game. If you're talking about competitive. But casually, I was playing this game and I was having fun. But that whole competitive aspect of it, if they want people to compete for this game, this is the wrong direction. Completely the wrong direction.
And that brings us finally to competition. The Tekken World Tour is set to open on May 9th and will probably still be fun to watch if you can stomach the disgusted faces of most of the competitors. But how many pros actually quit? How many will decide it's just not worth the effort until things normalize? At this point, the ball is in Namco's court, but it remains to be seen how exactly they'll respond to criticism from many fans that this is the worst Tekken patch ever.
Thanks for watching. If you want more content like this, hit the sub button and ring the notification bell. For unique bite-sized videos you won't find anywhere else, hit us up on our X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.